All right, it was a pretty cold December day when Kirby made his way to the podium at Georgia, being announced as the head coach in 2016. He was still going for another national championship at Alabama, and they did do that against Clemson and Deshaun Watson about 6 weeks later. But Matt has, we're going into year 9 here. Has Kirby exceeded expectations for uh, what he had coming in on that December day in 2015?
I think he has. I think you got to talk about what the expectations were at the
What?
time. I think most
Okay.
Georgia fans said maybe expected one. I mean, you fire Mark Rick, who the program was on the decline, but he was still a 10-win guy who almost got there. Almost got there. He basically played for the national championship in 2012 against Alabama and Atlanta. Just couldn't get it through. 2002 was a very good team, but I think when Kirby was hired, Georgia fans said, "Okay, now we're going to expect one." You bring home Kirby, Georgia guy who helped Nick Saban build Alabama with all those great defenses. We're going to expect one, hope for two, and then everything after that is gravy. Well, we're at two right now, and everything else, I think, definitely exceeds the expectations for a guy who's trying to build a program that hadn't won at Dean since 1980. So I think one may have been the expectations, and then everything else is if you bring home more than one trophy to Athens, you're the guy, you're the best coach ever. We're going into year 9, and he has a real good chance, Dean, of maybe bringing his third.
You're talking about this season.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I think the expectations have changed. Actually, I think they changed in 17. I think when they came within a play of winning the national championship, a game they probably should have won in overtime. I'm not sure they should have won it in the fourth quarter with that miss. Nobody remembers. Nobody seems to remember that field goal miss
I,
from Bama.
Rodrigo. Oh, the one at Bama at the end that they should have won in
Correct.
regulation.
You're talking about
Yeah,
the 18 SEC championship
that's
where
right. Yeah, that's
Rodrigo
right.
could have put them up 17.
Yeah. Okay.
I think things changed. Paul Feinbaum was talking about this not that long. Well, it may have been a while ago. Now that I think about it, I can't remember when it was exactly, but I think it was before Kirby and them won it in 21. And as I recall, he said, and he was accurate about this. He said, after 17, there was this expectation at Georgia that folks that the Dogs would win multiple national championships, and it hasn't happened yet. And I remember that moment in time. We were coming out of COVID, and they were the matchup was against Clemson, and I remember being in the dungeon at Dog Post after the Peach Bowl. You know what I'm talking about
Yeah.
downstairs, and watching the games and thinking, man, Georgia, Ohio State had laid waste to Clemson, and it was that they were losing Trevor Lawrence, they were losing ETN. There was a lot of change, and I was like, man, they're better than Clemson is, but they were a 4 point or 3 point dog. It was time for Georgia to win the national championship, and they had to prove that in game 1. They did. It was definitely not pretty, as you recall, Matt. That
No,
was
no.
that was one of the worst offensive games for Clemson. I mean, Clemson didn't score a touchdown, did they?
I don't think they did. The only touchdown was Chris Smith. Was
Right.
that the only touchdown of the game?
There was no
It was a big.
offensive. Their offensive touchdowns were not permitted in
Uh,
that game, so that was bad. But I think from that point forward, Matt, they didn't play a competitive game until the SEC championship, where they lost by 17 or whatever it was. You're looking at the Rivers Edge Adirondack chair from Eco Pie, our buddies down there. I don't know what's the better value, that you're getting it for 20 years with the warranty, or how these are really sturdy chairs. I actually inappropriately used one the other day to change some lights in the front yard, Matt. If you
okay.
if you must know, so that's what I was doing with the motor. But it supports me. It's very sturdy. You can get it in red and black. You saw it on the screen. The link is right down there below. Please check out EcoPoly today. Tell them Dog Post sent you. But what I was trying to throw it back to you about was, I think in 17, I think it was probably the Mississippi State game where you could tell it was not necessarily Notre Dame.
Right.
But after State, they just rolled past everybody. For me, it was the Vanderbilt game in 21, and that was they were still doing COVID restriction, Vandy, at the time, so I couldn't be on the field. I was in the press box, and they had scored 35 points in the first quarter, Georgia, And people are like, "Oh, Vanderbilt sucks." I was like, "Yeah, they do, but they're what we're watching right now is insane." And it was time for them to win a national championship. Kirby had not done it yet, and then to follow it up a year later with a complete statement all season long. What was I guess the two closest and tightest games were Mizzou and Ohio State.
Yeah.
Really competitive games. Ohio State gave them all they wanted. It was time, but I think the expectations have changed too. When you talk to insiders around the league and in the SEC, around the league, around the program and around the SEC, Matt, easy enough for me to say, more than one person's opinion is that Kirby can catch Nick in terms of 6 at one school. And I share that opinion myself. That means 4 more national championships. I don't think that's out of the question at all.
I don't think so either. I still wonder how long he's going to coach with all this talk about coaches leaving, about how the game's changing. It's too much work. I think if you're one program, Kirby Smart's one guy you'd still love to have, even in this environment, because he's a workhorse. The guy's just going to work and work and work and adapt and adapt. But as far as expectations walking through the door, I think he's met those. Now the expectations are, you compete and possibly play for a national championship, not winning it every year because you can't do that. But the expectation are you're going to be one of the best teams in the country, and you're going to put yourself in a position to play for a national championship every year. And they set that. They put that standard on them. And I'm trying to think of the phrase that he said, I guess, a couple years ago, one of the themes of the season. You want to be I forgot what it was, but something is a privilege.
Oh, pressure is a privilege for
Pressure
Billie Jean
is a
King.
privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. / Kirby Smart / Michael Scott. But it's worked.
Did Michael Scott really say that?
No, it sounds like a Michael Scott type of thing that he would. It should have Kirby written up on the board. But they made those expectations for themselves, and now it's up to him to play to that standard and those expectations every year. And they're always going to be in the playoff. Will they be a number 1 or 2 seed? Probably several times. But, yeah, they're going to be in a position to win several more national titles under him.
Dude, listen, I was a tennis person. I've not been a tennis person essentially since I stopped playing in college. When you have kids, it's over, right, Matt? You can speak to that.
Yeah. That's where my tennis game left, when I had kids. Yeah, that's when it went downhill. Yeah.
But Billie Jean, man, I mean, she nailed it because she was doing a lot more than just playing tennis. She was trying to organize a women's tour, etc. But there was pressure that went along with that. But she was just the best player, generally speaking. I mean, Chrissy, I mean, she's an 80-year-old woman, but there was pressure to win for Billie Jean at all times. I don't see how that's any different than what Georgia's dealing with right now. I mean, they're the best program. I think they're the best team, but they're definitely the best program. And for me right now, considering everything, Matt, the only program right now that can match them right now is Ohio State. I think Texas in the future, in theory, if they get their act together, will do it. But the pressure is always going to be there for Georgia with Kirby Smart, Ryan Day. You can feel that pressure big time.
Is this their 21? Like going into the 21 season, like you said, like it's time for Kirby to do it. Is this the year Ryan Day needs to do it?
Yeah, maybe, but I think it's time for Georgia to get one that they let slip away a year ago, a couple months ago. I mean,
one year it will be that way. I think 1 year they may not be the best team, end up winning it by maybe just playing their best at the end. I mean, for everyone you let slip through your fingers, one you might go up and steal from someone else. So I think that might balance each other out.
Well, they've let 2 slip away, and everybody's not the Bulls, where you get to the finals and you just win, like the Warrior, right? I mean, the Braves. I don't need to go there. The Falcons. I don't need to go there. It's just a little bit rough. But
the Braves are going to win another one soon. The Falcons will never. So I get that.
Poor Ryan. North Carolina basketball is sort of what Georgia should be in football, which is consistently doing it. Carolina, frankly, should have won more national championships than Roy Williams, but he ripped through a lot. Like what you don't want at Georgia is what what has happened at Kentucky, which is Calipari came in, he won his. It really doesn't feel like he's winning anymore to me. And I got a lot of buddies that are
Yeah.
Kentucky folks. It just doesn't feel like that's going to happen. I mean, and Kentucky's not like Clemson football. Like Clemson, that sort of came, I wouldn't say out of the blue. Kentucky, that is pressure all the time. So I think, in terms of going back to 2015 conversation, that late December 2015, there was never any question who was going to be the head coach. It was going to be Kirby. There was no coaching search that I was aware of. I've talked about this a little bit. I don't need to regurgitate it every time, but there was no question who it was going to be. I'm not sure. I thought they'd be a play away from winning a national championship in year 2, but I'm not sure. I'd have thought it would have taken until year whatever that was in 21 to win it, because they were so close in 17. And y'all got to remember, 18, 19, 20, that was a long walk through the desert, Matt. I mean, those were not fun years. 20 was horrific. And
Yeah.
19, the end of 19, with the way Georgia just couldn't score, they won all those games, but they just could not score. They had no shot against LSU in that
No.
game. It was hard. I
No.
mean, so you got to take advantage of what you've got. I think they shouldn't let this year slip away. We'll see if they do or they don't.
Yeah, I think they've got a really good shot. And like you said, very good 17, little dip down in 18, and then a little bit down in 19,
Yeah.
then a little bit down in 20. And you're thinking, okay, now there's a quarterback thing going on. How do we get this back on the roll on the train tracks, right? Then a guy named Stetson Bennett takes the job. The defense is one of the best college football has ever seen.
Yeah.
And then they go back up. Now it kind of feels like they're there at the top still, right here, as you can see my hand. And we'll see if they can stay there or if they turn it on and go in back to back at some point in this decade or whatever.
Do you think it's impossible for them to go back to back in the next, say, 5 years?
No. I mean, if Carson does it this year, 4-year Gunnar Stockton at that point next year, I mean, who says he couldn't get the job done too? So it's possible.
I think it's possible. But you think Kirby Smart has exceeded expectations?
I think too exceeded the expectations on the day he was hired. Yeah.
Final question here? What are expectations for the next 5 years for Kirby at Georgia?
At least one, probably two national titles. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't know. The one variable we really don't know right now is what is this new look league going to be like, and what is the new look college football playoff going to look like? Right there too. I mean, like we don't know what that will look like. It may be exceedingly more difficult to win national championships. Thanks for watching.